We are here to discuss a panel on how to build scalable and great products. And we have with us, I'm not sure there can be a better panel to discuss a product like this, especially when you have people from Flipkart, OA Rooms, and Now Floats. For those of you probably may not have heard about Now Floats a lot more, as much as Flipkart and OA Rooms. Now Floats is more on the B2B side, which is also probably why you may not have heard as much. But in terms of scale, Jess just told me that they've reached 120,000 retailers. So scale-wise, make no mistakes, they're growing extremely, extremely fast. But the good thing about this panel is there is a mix of good scaled B2C companies like Flipkart and OA Rooms, and a B2B company, which is Now Floats, which should give us a good perspective on building products on both sides, right? So to start the panel, I would, I would touch upon the part on, what are some of the key ingredients and key proponents of building a great product, especially nuances between B2B and B2C side, and what are some of the key highlights that you would want to touch upon?
Sure. I can start with a B2C perspective, right? I think I've been at Flipkart for about a year and a half. Prior to that, I spent 15 years in the US, and I've been in both B2B and B2C kind of companies. And I think just speaking from a B2C or even B2B, I think one of the core fundamental paradigms of building good products is, I would say, customer/user centricity, right? I'll give you an example. Was in Responses, which went IPO in 2011. It was a marketing software SaaS provider, and later acquired by Oracle. So the core thing was we used to provide marketing software to some of the biggest retailers in the US, like Kohl's, Sears, Nordstrom, etc. However, the important part for us to understand is what are they trying to do for their customers, right? And how do we make them successful to do that? So it's very irrespective whether it's B2C or B2B, what is the end goal, right? Like, and really thinking deep about that, really understanding what the motivations are, what success means to whoever your customer is, and being able to drive towards that, I think is one of the four fundamental things, at least in my mind.
I think align on that one, just to put it in different words possibly. So the key thing about any product is whether it solves a problem for the user, and the problem is big enough that eventually you will make money from that solution. Anything else is periphery of that part. So whether which technology do you use, how do you market it, etc. It's just all around how do you scale this product up eventually. But fundamentally, there has to be a problem that users are willing to pay for getting solved, or basically there's another way of making money from that solution. And that is really, really core to it. I think there are certain nuances that come in with a B2C or a B2B product in the sense that how engaged the user base is. For a B2C product which is out there in the market, internet product, you have customers or users who are not so engaged with the product. They'll discover your site through some means, land up on that. And the product has to be attractive enough to capture their attention and mind share very, very easily. They should be able to very easily find out how this product is solving something that they are there for. With a B2B product, you have a little more liberty to engage with the users and even get them to adapt to what you've built. Maybe just as a different view on that, but at least the way I have seen this is, especially building products for internal employees or suppliers, that you can have people go out and talk to them. You can have people go out and train them, find out more about them, simply because they're a little more invested into that product. They're more available. They're willing to talk a little more. With a B2C consumer product, the attention span that you have with customers is much lower. So I think that is one key difference that I see in my mind.
I'll just add to that. I mean, at Flipkart as well, we have both flavors, I would say, slightly, right? Where we as a platform, as a marketplace, we have the consumer-facing experience as well as a B2B experience through sellers, right? And it's very interesting, the dichotomy in that goes in the company, like which customer is more important. Sometimes you really want to, sell. The seller's livelihood depends upon Flipkart. So a common slogan that we end up using within Flipkart is happy buyers buy more, create happy sellers. I mean, that's really the tagline that we try to use when we try to prioritize features, try to make decisions. Because at the end of the day, the seller is going to be happy when he sells more, and the only way he's going to sell more is a happy buyer. So that's the crux of it. Just one other nuance I would like to add with B2B and B2C is you have to be very thoughtful. I mean, in B2C, you have to be equally thoughtful in terms of rollout of features, etc. But in B2B, you may have deep system integrations with the B2B partner, right? So you have to be really thoughtful, plan it out with them. What are the repercussions of that, if it is SaaS or non-SaaS on-premise? What are the repercussions on their system? How do they, have an upgrade part to that? Like, those are some of the things that are, or flavors that come into B2B, versus in B2C, it's just expected to work and be seamless. Data is expected to be transformed and it's just there, right? So that, I would say, also is, one of the critical, nuances that I've always felt when I've worked on B2C products versus B2B products. Jess, you want to?
Sure. So, completely agree with what they've said, and hard to add value to what they've already said. If you see what Dipali said, it's clearly, the user experience is very critical and from a B2C, and I'll tell you in a second from a B2B perspective, and then Anurag saying that, it has to solve a real problem in a way which is easily consumed and stuff like that. So, as Now Floats, we are somewhat like Dipali and somewhat again like Oyorum, because we are B2B2C. If we don't drive consumers to our retailers whom we give an online presence, which is auto SEO, that's where our patent is. And if we don't bring the end customers to our B2B customers, we're going to die, because he's not going to see value through it. So so all of us, if you see, have started from a different point, but have the same complexity. We have to keep the seller happy, in this case, and the buyer happy, which means there are two complexity. So in my humble opinion, what's happening is this B2B, B2C, the line between them is actually, in my opinion, dead already. It's just gone and dead. Because every B2C customer who's gone on Flipkart or booked a hotel on Oyo Rooms is expecting the same ease in his ERP, which is running in his office, which is a B2B software. That's already here. I mean, I don't think we have to talk about that. We are already here. The point I think Anurag made, when was the last time anybody in this room pressed an F1 to get a help menu on a PC? Those are dead. If your product is not going to run on its own the first time, the right time, and it's so intuitive, the user experience is so understood that you know what to do next, that's where life is. And every B2B consumer, B2B customer is also a B2C person, right? He is going to start comparing. He is going to say, "Arey, wo to itna aaram se chalta hai. How are you not able to do my ERP to run exactly the way I run maybe another analytics tool on my phone? Why is this not running the same way?" So in my opinion, product, very important part of what we are talking. The last line, which is very critical, in which, many ways these behaviors are set up. So you're actually building a behavior. You're leveraging an existing behavior. अब सब WhatsApp करते हैं तो WhatsApp ही करते हैं. You have to understand, that's why help chat, and you've started your chat, and you've got big chat. The fact is the whole world as a behavior has erupted. There is a behavior. You can't stop that behavior. How do you leverage that behavior for yourself is a critical part of the product being successful. So that's where you have to understand, either you start a behavior or you tap on an existing behavior and innovate on top of it. And that's where I think the world is becoming very consumerish in the way they look at IT.
Sure, no, very helpful. And one other aspect that I want to touch upon was, more and more there is a view towards building the products which are data driven, right? I mean, so at the stage of actually thinking through the product, there's a lot of data that is collected, and the overall product management is very data driven is what a lot of the processes today that are getting followed is kind of focusing on. Just want to pick the thoughts of the panelists here on what do you really think about all of this? Can data be helpful all the time when we are actually building the product, or it's a lot more intuition driven?
I think data is a great tool to harness. Given that we are in the age of internet, and getting data on user insights or user behavior is very, very easy. There are tools available to mine that data, track performance. It becomes much easier to then sit back and say that let us first debate out what could potentially work. Let me go and narrow down those choices, because the cost of experiment has actually come down to a much larger degree, right? So you can experiment a lot. You can run out a bunch of these things, see which is what gets adopted by users. But in my opinion, there is nothing that really beats talking to customers and getting insights from them. Data can throw up insights to a great degree, and I think a lot of optimizations can be done using data. But a lot of new insights come from either talking to your users or talking to your suppliers, if you're in a marketplace. I remember a conversation with the product team, at one of the matrimony sites when we were sharing notes. One of the interesting features that gone out and built was to say that a delayed upload or a delayed go live of a profile, when you set up a matrimony profile. And the idea that they figured out after talking to a bunch of people, Muhurat, when they want to take that profile live, they talk to a pandit and they'll figure out that this profile has to go live on 27th October, 11:27 a.m., right? And users were actually logging onto that specific time and then uploading the profile as per the Muhurat. And had you just been looking at data, these are the kind of insights that will never come out, right? Unless you go and talk to people, to the real users, these are things that are very difficult to get from data. There are a bunch of other examples that we have encountered in the past. Data. I find data incredibly useful. I've spent a lot of time doing data analytics, but I've always found that those are more optimization calls that you get from them. It's always good to throw out a bunch of experiments and then figure out which one gets used. But the real insights that move the needle by a lot come from talking to your suppliers, that come from talking to your consumers.
Yeah, so let me add on a quick thing. So this is absolutely the truth, right? I mean, you have these two views of life. One is this huge data. There's so much data coming from. There's so many signals coming from the internet. I mean, we're all sitting on a terabyte of data a day. I mean, this is just amazing stuff coming out. It's it's crazy to know that you can find out that a girl of 19 years of age who has who's undergraduate in Bangalore, in South Bangalore, is buying shoes in October last week, almost every fourth week, October, last week of the month, and that's the data coming out. It's absolutely true. That's the data we are all sitting on, right? That's the kind of behavior we see. But to the point I think Anurag is making. A very pertinent example, we as Now Floats, we're not a very large company, still small in our head. We in the month of May, we drove from Amritsar to Kanyakumari. We just sat in a car, put 2 product managers inside it, and said that we are bringing some small and local businesses online, but we probably don't know these behaviors. We are all ex-Microsoft, ex-Google, ex-whatever, and sitting in our beautiful rooms. We've never gone out. And so we drove in 25 days. It's called Digital Desh. And we unearthed so much in that 25 days. And we were making live product changes. And the product manager sitting in the room here. We made live product changes. We heard, for example, in Ajmer, this guy saying, "Ye image gallery kya hota hai?" He says, "Photo bolo na aap isko. Main photo samajhta hu." And you got to change it to photo gallery straight there and then. And you call back your team and says, "Boss, image gallery nahi chalta, photo gallery chalta hai." So that you couldn't have got that. What you would have got is some A/B testing that people are not clicking image gallery, and you said, "Ye kyun nahi kar rahe?" You wouldn't know the answer because the whole world calls it an image gallery. So we did that, and so many behaviors come out. My favorite is that there are, this is this country, right? This is the behavior of this country and happening today for people who want to be entrepreneurs. They're very isolated example, and we always say this statistically invalid data. What we did was statistically invalid data. We met 232 businessmen. You guys will say, "Hey, no big deal." But the fact is we met someone in Karwar who was a fishing guy, who takes pictures of the fish as he catches, and as he reaches the signal on the beach, sends it to the 5 restaurants who need to buy fish in Karwar, in Karnataka, is a behavior which we were shocked at. One guy, so there were 10 other such shocking examples, but you got to quickly understand that and bring that into your product, saying, this guy has a smartphone, he has a data plan, he's on WhatsApp, he's talking in Hindi or English or Kannada in his WhatsApp. Quickly 5 different behaviors were captured. And the fact that he took the image and was able to upload it to a group. So that's very critical, absolutely critical. There's big data, there is realistic touch and feel data.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So, good examples on how end customer interactions are very, very important in managing the product and making the product more and more rich. So that's one side of the coin, right, where you're looking at making the product more and more powerful. Let's pull back a little bit, and my next point was more around at the idea stage, when you're actually conceptualizing the product and when you're thinking through the product. There are school of thoughts. One which says, don't worry as much about the monetization or the overall finance part, etc., etc. But equally, there is a school of thought that you need to think through the overall product idea in a much more holistic and strategic way, including the financial management, than to just go ahead and build something that you intuitively feel is a useful thing, right? So any thoughts around that, especially for the budding entrepreneurs who are thinking about a new product idea? Any views or any suggestions on how to think about the product management or the overall product development in a holistic way, or go with the intuition of having identified a certain gap and attacking that gap?
I can start with that. I think it also connects to the previous question, right? There's qualitative data and quantitative data. And, and I think insights come from both, user insights specifically. So I think the core thing is going to be, what is the user insight that draws from qualitative data or quantitative data, which is a real problem that you attempt to solve. It really comes down to that, right? So, I mean, and going back, tying that to your question, I think if we really, at Flipkart, let's say, we're starting off a brand new initiative. There is like, as you said, like terabytes and terabytes and terabytes of data that we can go and look at and analyze, saying, hey, will the user be interested in this concept? Or, even the concept might not have been formed, and you look at data patterns, and then you realize, hey, you know what? Users are, let's say, 2 years back, users used to kind of upgrade their mobiles in about 12 months. Now that, time frame has shrinked to, whatever, 9 months, let's just say, right? Those are the insights that come out of data, and then you start thinking, what do we do about this? There's another use case, completely different, where, we are talking to our sellers, and they are like, it's extremely difficult for us. We have all this inventory in our shop, and we want to quickly be able to upload it into Flipkart. We just need a way to do it with our phone, right? And a very quick way to do it on our phone. There's a background, and you just kind of, connect it. So I think, talking to users as well as, looking at data will definitely benefit. But I think the core thing is like, how do you come up or understand what is the core user problem that you're going to solve? And a lot of times what happens is users tell you the solution and not the problem, right? So they'll tell you that, hey, why don't you do this? And, it'll work so much better. But let me understand, what is the difficulty that you're trying to face? And maybe the solution to that could be, very, very different. And actually, those are the moments when you end up delighting the user, when you really go deep into understanding what their problem is, and then being able to, come up with a solution which might, hey, I did not even think about, this could be solved this way. That's why you actually delight the user, right? So when you're building core products, focus on the user. When you're starting from scratch, you can build, thousands of financial models, you can think about monetization, etc. But if you don't have that core user insight, it's not going to help. And it needs to be a real problem that the user cares about, right? Where it changes their life, the way they live. So really focusing on that. Just one other thought on that, in that direction, is that especially for a newer concept, change is inevitable. You need to pivot. You need to consistently learn, try to establish a consistent connection with your users and get feedback and be able to pivot continuously. Change is inevitable. If you have an agile team, you should be able to do that really fast and you'll arrive. And that's the only way to arrive to a good solution. Right? If you come up with a monolithic idea and take 6 months to build it out without talking to your users, it's not going anywhere. That's pretty much sure. So,
Yeah, I can add on to, this is a very classic example, and let's get real in this conversation, right? Let's just get to the, so Dipali said this point, right? Let's say the seller needs to update inventory. The old economy ERP is dead. Okay, let's all agree for a second, just for this next 10 minutes. Old economy, ERP is dead. Supply chains are very difficult, and the kind of people who are jumping on the internet bandwagon are people who are not used to this 6 months of functionality gathering on SAP, 3 months of a consultant coming and figuring it out. They just want it tomorrow morning, and they want an ERP running on their phone. Now, let's say there was and we have this exactly the same issue, and I'll tell you how we built it. So let's say our 150,000 customers, we need them to upload their inventory on the sites that we give them. We have a product which is site, and then these guys upload their product catalog and content, and we auto SEO that. That's what we do for a living. So it's very critical that they upload the content, so let's say we give them a little app which says click, take a picture. So he loves it on day one, you watch him, watch her or him, and they upload a picture. Then you realize that after a week, they stop uploading pictures. They don't, either they stop uploading pictures or they stop giving you details about that picture. So, ek hafta nikal gaya. So you keep watching. You just sit and keep watching his behavior. You go to the person and say, what happened? He says, oh, bahut difficult hai, sir. I'm very busy, sir. I can't. So you realize that, he's doesn't want to get more business from his existing business. So you figured out one behavior that he's not going to work. He's lazy. So let's start with laziness. This guy is lazy. So what you do is you write an algorithm which prompts, which says, why don't you upload something today? He sees it. It's an app notification. Chalo ji. He uploads he's got prompted. So he's going to put, another month has gone by, prompting has stopped working. He's ignoring, the left, the right and the left on the notification. Prompting is finished. What do you do then? So then you say, consumers are searching for water bottles around your community. You should talk about water bottles. He says, oh, I've never thought about water bottles to be as a product catalog and talked about water bottles. Now he starts getting the 5th prompt from you saying, okay, now I have to talk more about water bottles. So it's all automated, by the way. So he talks about water bottles. Then after 1 month, he stops talking about water bottles because he says, sab kuch to bata diya. Pura water bottle bhi dal diya, juta bhi dal diya. Everything that I have in my store or my service, I'm complete. Now you're at the stage, the guy feels that I've done everything right. And you're stuck with him. He's saying, I've done. Now what do? You reach the next level. You say, if you sell shoes, have you thought about talking about marathon gear versus shoes? So then you've gone one level above of what are people searching for? Water bottle was a mundane example. You have gone one level above. You're telling him what people are searching in the vicinity. So it keeps on going. You keep on seeing that behavior on what this behavior is. You're developing your product along with the person who's using it. Till the point you reach, what we do today now is, we say for marathon gear, here is a great statement. I sell marathon gear for ultra marathons. Click to post now. Click, post. So from the laziness, you moved all the way to just click here, it gets posted. So that's the evolution of what you have to do, which is a lot of quantitative, a lot of qualitative. And by the way, this example was a real example on our platform. It was not a made up example. This is a real example of how you have to keep focusing at every step of the product on where people are falling off. Why are they not engaging with you? What are their reasons? Talk to them, and how you're developing your product along with them. That's how you keep building.
Sure. No, absolutely. And switching gears, we spoke a lot about the key components of building a kind of great product. But one of the key things that drives it is the team. And as an investor, I can tell you for sure is that when we look at a tech company and look at investing in the tech company, we certainly look at who's the person who's driving the product part of it, because that's not generally believed that that's not a talent that you can build easily. So would love to get your thoughts on what are some of the key challenges that you face when you're trying to build a product team, And what are some of the suggestions that you have for the audience here when they are looking to build a great sort of product teams?
Um, Actually, I have a slightly counter view to that. I think product is a function where we need a generalist, and a lot of people can actually fit into that role. There are very few items that you'll say that has to be a specific requirement that without which I cannot have a product manager, working with me. But there are certain things which, and depending on the kind of role and the kind of product that you're building, you could have skew towards one or the other. But there are certain items that I think are important, and you can find those skills or those traits to be present in people from various backgrounds. We've also found, some people who have not had any engineering or coding background to be able to do product management for a internet-based business, simply by the virtue that they have been very passionate about solving that user problem, or they have been great communicators and they can drive energy and passion in the team. So I think two, three traits where I've found, people excel and do really well. One trait is that for a typical product management setup, the way organizations set up is the product manager has to lead by influence and not by authority. So you have to have people who can, evangelize that product and talk to other people and get in that energy about that product into other people who are not really reporting in that guy. The other key part is, especially for a B2C product, if you are also one of the users of that product, how do you really separate your own thought process from the general thought process that the consumer base will have, right? So if, let's say I was at MakeMeter before and working in a travel product, because I was also one of the consumers of that product, the general thought that is very easy to come and bias your thought is that what works for me works for most of my users. Or what my friends call cool is something that I should build. Simply because, that's how I think it works, right? So how do you dissociate yourself from the thought that what works for you may not really work for everyone, and you might have to actually cut down on some of the things that you think are cool, but are probably not worth investing the time on. The other key trait is, how do you be compassionate enough to talk to your users? At times could be internal employees, at times could be external stakeholders, to understand and listen to their problems, but still be strong enough to be able to say a no to them. It's like, yeah, I'm listening to you. You're telling me something. I think it makes sense. You're coming from the right intent. But I'm still saying a no to it because I think there are other things which are more priority for the business. And it still could be that for that person who's driving that role, whatever he's asking for is probably the most important thing. But still for the business, it doesn't make sense to invest resources at that point into that project. So how do you pull the trait where you can still send off someone, probably not happy, but at least not angry about the fact that he came, he talked to you, and you still said a no. So these are some of the things which are key. Of course, hard skills like analytical skills. How you analyze the data. How do you can you understand technology? Can you at least, even if you don't know how to code, can you figure out how systems talk to each other? Those are key. But on the softer side, these are skills which I think make a lot of difference.
So just to add to what Anurag said, I mean, at least in my mind, and probably how the philosophy we follow at Flipkart as well is, product becomes kind of the unifying point for user, technology, and business. Like, they need to have a fairly deep understanding of all the three and figure out how to bring these three together to create both a successful user experience as well as a successful business using the right technology, right? So, the term that is commonly used is, product managers are CEOs of their products, and they have to continuously balance, this versus that between the three, and it's a hard knack. Flipkart, I mean, I think we've been fairly successful in hiring the right talent, and the philosophy that we've gone with is, hiring generalists as opposed to extreme specialists. And we also believe that even within Flipkart, product managers kind of move around, and that's true with a lot of bigger companies that I've been in part of, in my past life as well. Product managers are encouraged to move around in different groups. So they get exposed to different problem areas, whether it's B2B, B2C, anything. What happens is it broadens out their perspective in terms of how they think, right? They take a problem and they can relate it to something they've seen earlier and kind of really bring in a different perspective. I think that definitely helps, kind of groom product management within the organization itself. One other thing that we've tried to do is we've tried to get good senior, product talent in the company, which kind of brings in the standard, product management practices. For example, a simple one would be, as we've been talking about, customer centricity, or another one is 80-20 rule, and Rakan was kind of, leading towards that as well. There are 100 problems that you can solve, but, there is probably 20 use cases will solve for 80% of our customers, right? So you have to attack those first. And how do you identify those? How do you go after those? And really having the eye to do that becomes a very, very important aspect. And looking at it as a third person, like not putting yourself into it, really pulling yourself out, saying, if I was a customer or a business person or a technology person, how would I look at this? And how do I create a synergy between the three? A lot of people, I've come across from different disciplines, they come to me saying, hey, Dipali, I want to move into product management. And I'm like, what's your motivation to move into product management? That's my first question always, because it's very, very important that the person is trying to solve something for a user, like passionate about a problem, right? If the answer is, you know what, I'm bored of what I'm doing now and I want to move on doing something else, not the right time to move it. It probably not the right thing to. You really need to think about, so I talk to a lot of people who want to move in, and we have a lot of discussions, and finally they end up saying, you know what, I just probably want to do something else, so I'll just do that, move from this team to this team, and I'll continue in engineering, and that's totally fine, right? So that's something that I've been kind of, it's extremely hard to find product management talent, and good product management, very, very hard. And some are really good on the business side and they need to be coached to be more on the user side. Some are very good on the technology side. They need to be coached to start thinking about the user and the business. So everybody comes in with their strengths, and I think as product leaders in the company, you need to identify what that is and being able to create the right channel. So if you have a platform product manager, you want to be able to give them enough exposure to even do front-end and user experiences and clearly round off their skill set. That will help that individual tremendously throughout their lives. So, those are some of the things that, we commonly do in Flipkart.
Sure. So, before we kind of open the session to questions from the audience, one kind of last part I want to touch upon is, one of the key things is also considered as, when you're building a product, if the product is not working out, identifying what are some of the pivots that can make the product work, right? And, from the panel here, would love to get thoughts around any of the pivots that you see in your experience and some of the key learnings from there to the audience.
Sure, I can start that. But the first things first, I think there is some bad connotation attached to the word pivot. I don't know if the VCs have done it or somebody has done it. But the pivot is a brilliant thing, guys. First thing first. Okay, anybody who's ashamed of pivoting is going to shut down sooner or later, because in today's world, in fact, every day is a pivot. Take my word for it. Every day is a pivot. You just don't tell it to VCs. You just say, nahi kar rahe hum kuch. So because they don't like that word. Anyway, but
well, we've funded several pivoted companies.
There you go. Chalo, claps for Venkatesh. No. So Dipali said something to us as we were preparing for something, and then this is Flipkart. This is probably the biggest company India has today. And she says, we just did a pivot recently. And I said, wow, wow, what did you do? She said, we moved to a marketplace model, to a platform model. So the first credibility on, taking your thunder away, I rather say it versus you. So this is Flipkart openly in a conversation saying, we just pivoted. It's been a hard thing for us. We've been trying to get buyers and sellers, and they have all the money, all the best product managers in the world, but they are doing it because it's a market need. They know where the market is going. They're building that market in many ways. So it's a very key part of a life cycle of a company, of a product to pivot. If you're Flipkart or or your rooms or whoever you are. So we also did a very large pivot. We started 3 years back with a B2C focus and pivoted to B2B within 3-4 months of it, because we were ahead of our time. If we had done it today, Venkatesh would have been giving me a lot of money. When we moved to B2B, of course, we moved to B2B2C. We still do 5 million consumers a month on our platform, so it's very B2B2C. We are very focused. We have 2 product managers, a consumer product manager and a B2B product manager. That's how we have someone internally. But pivots are super critical, because what you're doing in a pivot is essentially trying to deeply understand that the pivot is usually you have learned and what is working versus what you thought. So that's the fundamental word of a pivot. Sometimes they are larger pivots, sometimes they are smaller. And there is no one, in my opinion, who's completely pivoted. Even this B2C to B2B pivot sounds very big to you people. I can prove it to you. It was, from 60 degrees to 45 degrees. We didn't go 60 to 180. We just went from here to here. So these are not large pivots. These are absolute validation of what has worked versus what has not, which is what we've been saying. Behaviors have to be seen, product has to evolve, and you have to evolve with them. So in many ways, you call it a pivot, but it's just the evolution of your product. And you just keep on thinking about it over and over again, and call it pivot, call it evolution, whatever. But it's just the right thing to do on the next morning. That's in my opinion, as you must do it. You must do it every day, in my opinion.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think change is inevitable in, what we do. Change is inevitable, and the more easily you embrace it, it's going to be easier for you and your team and for the company as well, I think. So, just giving out an example, Flipkart, we started building the marketplace platform like 2011 probably, right? And we've been kind of, trying to ramp up sellers and buyers, but we also had our retail business on the side, and we were kind of doing that more pivoted towards retail most of the time. But I think late last year is where we said we're going to double down on this one. And what it meant is our entire pipeline of products needed to be ready for that, right? Like, it's very different to have a few thousand sellers to taking that to 100K, 200K to 1 million over a lifetime. It's a very, very different game, because these sellers now will have a serious livelihood on Flipkart, right? And how our hubs are, our supply chain is designed, how close are they to our hubs, how soon can we pick up products from them, how soon can we deliver, how do we deal with returns, especially, I'll give you an example, precious jewelry, right? If you start shipping, selling precious jewelry, the seller sells something, the buyer takes off like a small whatever piece of gold of it and returns. You need to have the entire pipeline, which is completely foolproof, to not let this happen. Otherwise, the seller feels cheated or the buyer feels cheated, and you don't want both, right? So the thinking is completely, it changes, and the entire company needs to start thinking, what are the repercussions if I change a policy for the buyer? There's a seller repercussion. If I change a policy for the seller, there's a buyer repercussion, right? So we need to think through everything from that point of view. And that was it was a mindset change in the company, which was very, very important, right? So I think, I think based off of where we see the opportunity, based off of what users would seek from a destination like, let's say, Flipkart, being able to pivot. And I'm not just because I'm a Flipkart employee, but I'm fairly amazed at how we've pivoted at this stage of the company with such a big strategic change, right? So it's big, and it needs a lot of prior thought in terms of how to pull it together, right from product to operations to business model. Everything needs to come together for you to actually make a pivot. So it's a big thing, but I think if it is the right thing, it's obviously well worth it.
Yeah, just to throw in some examples, right? Some of the companies that we've seen closely as well. Flipkart has been there. Even Mintra started as a customization company, pivoted into a full-fledged e-commerce. Snapdeal started as a deals and coupons company, and then pivoted into what they've done today. There's a company called LensCard, which we funded, which is more of fashion accessories, then started kind of focusing on just eyewear. Several other examples. So, as Jess was saying, there is a bad connotation that is prevalent in the market for the word pivot, but it's not necessarily a bad thing, even when you are having conversations with the investor. Just thought I'll clear that. Okay, cool. So with that, we open it for questions from the audience.